Sandy Lyle was a true pioneer for European golf, a two-time major champion whose story, unfortunately, is also one of betrayal and hated rivals. He reached the top of the sport, winning the Open Championship in 1985 and the Masters Tournament in 1988. He climbed all the way to world number 2 in April 1988. Lyle was part of the famous Big Five of European golf, alongside Nick Faldo, Seve Ballesteros, Bernhard Langer, and Ian Woosnam. This group changed the game forever, turning European golf from an afterthought into a global powerhouse. But for a man who reached the pinnacle of the sport, how did feuds and bitterness come to define his legacy and cost him everything he worked for after his playing days were over? The first feud began in the early 1980s at a tournament in Kenya. Lyle was struggling with the intense glare from the African sun. To help himself see better, he placed a simple strip of tape on his putter. It was a small thing, barely noticeable, but it was also, unknowingly, against the strict rules of golf about changing your clubs. What happened next would haunt Lyle for decades. His play-in partner that day was Nick Faldo. Instead of quietly telling Lyle about the mistake, Faldo stayed silent. He watched Lyle play the entire round. Then, after it was all over, Faldo reported him. Lyle was disqualified. He had worked hard in the brutal heat to post a good score, and it was all taken away. A tour official named George O'Grady had to tell him the news. Lyle later said the moment felt devastating, almost like the end of the world. That gives you an idea of how deeply this betrayal cut him. Now, Faldo's decision was clearly unsporting. The unwritten gentleman's code in golf says you alert someone to a fixable mistake. You don't wait until it's too late and then report them. Even other golfers were furious. Veteran player Brian Barnes said he wanted to find Faldo and punch his lights out. That tells you how the rest of the golf community saw Faldo's actions.
It was seen as a gross act of bad sportsmanship and betrayal. And this wasn't a one-time thing for Faldo. His reputation among his peers was notoriously prickly. Later, golfer Sam Torrance openly criticized Faldo's behavior toward other players. Some of Faldo's peers even gave him a harsh nickname, Fig Jam, which implied extreme arrogance. So yes, Faldo acted badly. But here's where the script turns. The real issue isn't just what Faldo did. The real issue is that Lyle never let it go. The wound from Kenya planted a deep seed of injustice in Lyle's career. He carried this grudge for over 26 years. Even decades later, when he wrote his autobiography, Lyle was still fanning the flames and detailing the betrayal in angry detail. That's not the mark of someone who moved on. That's the mark of someone who let bitterness define them. And this chronic sense of being wronged had real consequences. In 1989, Lyle had to present the green jacket at the Masters to the new champion. That champion was Nick Faldo. Imagine having to hand over the symbol of your greatest triumph to the man you believed had stabbed you in the back years earlier. It was a painful, public moment. A symbolic handover of British golfing supremacy from Lyle to his longtime rival. After this, Lyle's game fell apart. Just before the 1989 Masters, he had said he wanted to win at least one major every season for the next 10 years. Instead, he stopped winning significant events after 1992. He was only 34 years old. Analysts linked this collapse to a severe loss of confidence and mental fragility. The psychological injury from the Faldo betrayal had reduced his professional resilience. He became vulnerable to a confidence slump that ended his elite career far too early. So here's a question. What do you think is worse in sports? Breaking a written rule by mistake or breaking an unwritten code of honor on purpose? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And while you're there, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into sports history. The second feud came much later, but it was even more damaging. In 2005, Colin Montgomerie was playing in the Indonesian Open. He was under huge pressure. He needed a top 3 finish to keep his world top 50 ranking, which would let him play in major American events. On the 14th hole, his ball landed in a greenside bunker. Then, the weather got bad and play was stopped. When Montgomerie came back, he replaced his ball. Critics said he put it in a better spot, which gave him a better stance outside the steep part of the bunker. Montgomerie admitted he made an error and apologized. He said he didn't cheat on purpose.
The European tour supported his version of events. The incident faded away. Until 2009. In 2009, the European tour was choosing the captain for the 2010 Ryder Cup. Lyle desperately wanted the job. He called it his last chance. This was his opportunity to finally get the respect and leadership role he felt he deserved. But the committee chose Colin Montgomerie instead. Lyle was furious, and instead of handling his disappointment quietly, he launched a brutal public attack. Lyle accused Montgomerie of replacing the ball badly during that 2005 tournament. He said explicitly that this was a form of cheating. He also insulted Montgomerie personally, calling him a bit of a drama queen. These were not private comments. Lyle said these things publicly to the media, where everyone could hear them. People were shocked. Lyle was forced to apologize, but even his apology was clumsy and incomplete. He said he regretted the timing of his remarks, especially how they affected Montgomerie's preparation for the Open, but he refused to take back the actual accusation. He still insisted the drop was pretty poor. He even said the incident would probably live with Montgomerie for the rest of his life. This wasn't an apology. It was a restatement of the attack with a thin layer of regret on top.
Lyle's decision to weaponize this old controversy showed a massive misunderstanding of golf politics. As commentator Peter Allis said, cheating is the indelible ink of golf, the stain that never goes away. By throwing around the word cheating, Lyle was using the most damaging accusation possible. He did it out of personal frustration and bitterness over losing the captaincy. The attack worked, in a sense. It amplified Montgomerie's existing reputation for being difficult and a pain to fellow players. When Montgomerie was inducted into the World Golf Hall of Fame in 2012, he barely got in. He received only 51% of the vote. That means nearly half of the voters thought he didn't deserve it. Lyle's accusations had left a lasting stain, but the attack destroyed Lyle's own ambitions even more. A Ryder Cup captain has to be a unifying, diplomatic figure, someone who can bring a team together. By engaging in public combat and making unsubstantiated cheating allegations, Lyle proved to the committee that he didn't have the right temperament. He came across as volatile and divisive. He guaranteed his own permanent exclusion from the role he wanted so badly. And here's the kicker. Before the decision was made, Montgomerie had publicly endorsed Lyle for the captaincy. He said it would be a shame if Lyle missed out. So this wasn't even a long-running feud between the two of them. It was a sharp, dramatic explosion, triggered entirely by Lyle's frustration and bitterness when he didn't get what he wanted. The two feuds frame Lyle's entire career. The Faldo incident defined him as a victim early on. It planted the seed of injustice that he carried for decades. That chronic sense of being wronged made him psychologically fragile. It likely contributed to his mental collapse after 1989. Then, when he faced another disappointment 20 years later with the Ryder Cup captaincy, that old wound reopened. He responded with an aggressive, uncompromising attack on Montgomerie. This time, Lyle wasn't the victim, he was the aggressor. And this time, his actions weren't just personally damaging, they were politically fatal. Lyle had been campaigning hard for the captaincy in both 2008 and 2010. He thought he was the obvious choice, but there were problems. First, Nick Faldo had been given the captaincy in 2008. Lyle even tried to bury the hatchet by offering to serve as Faldo's vice captain. It was a strategic move, an attempt to get back in the good graces of the committee. But Faldo's captaincy was a disaster. The European team lost. After that failure, the committee changed its approach. They stopped simply handing the role around to legends of the game. They started looking for leaders with real diplomatic and unifying skills. The bar for captaincy had been raised. Second, Lyle's own behavior became a massive liability. His inability to resolve the decades-old Faldo feud was bad enough, but then he launched his severe public attack on Montgomerie. The committee
play needed stability and harmony. Lyle's documented volatility and combativeness made it clear he wasn't the right man. He was relegated to an afterthought in the selection process. The role he saw as his last chance slipped away forever. Looking back, the pattern is clear. Lyle's early dominance on the European tour put him in direct competition with Faldo for the title of Britain's top golfer. Lyle had won 3 Order of Merit titles before Faldo even secured his first major championship. That made him a primary target for Faldo's ruthless, competitive instinct. The Kenya incident wasn't just about following the rules. It was an act of professional warfare, a calculated move to damage a rival who stood in the way of Faldo's ambitions. But while Faldo moved forward and collected 6 major titles of his own, Lyle stayed stuck in the past. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had been wrong. That inability to move on became a defining characteristic of his personality.
When the Montgomery situation arose decades later, Lyle fell back into the same pattern. He felt slighted, and he lashed out publicly and aggressively, burning bridges and destroying his own reputation in the process. The contrast between Lyle's talent and his temperament couldn't be more stark. On the golf course, he was brilliant and composed. His famous bunker shot at the 1988 Masters showed incredible skill under pressure. But off the course, he struggled to handle conflict and disappointment. His peers moved on from professional slights and focused on their futures. Lyle did the opposite. He held on to grudges and let them poison his relationships within the sport. This pattern of behavior ultimately defined how the golf world remembered him. Instead of being celebrated purely for his achievements, he became known as someone who couldn't let go of the past. His legacy became a cautionary tale about the dangers of letting bitterness consume you. And so, while the drama and feuds will forever stain his story, we can't forget the sheer talent of Sandy Lyle. He turned professional in 1977 and immediately made his mark, winning the Sir Henry Cotton Rookie of the Year award in 1978. He topped the European Tour Order of Merit 3 times, in 1979, 1980, and 1985. His 1985 Open Championship win made him the first British winner in 16 years. His 1988 Masters victory, secured with that legendary bunker shot on the 18th hole, remains one of the greatest moments in the sport's history. He spent 167 weeks in the top 10 of the world rankings between 1986 and 1989. He also won the Players' Championship in 1987, proving he could compete at the highest level in America. His victories helped put European golf on the map and paved the way for future generations. What a career it was for Sandy Lyle. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.